You ready, Mr. Smith?
Yes, sir.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the workshop of the City of Griffin Board of Commissioners, December 11, 2018. Hope everyone's having a great Griffin day. So moving into our first presentation to discuss red flags, speed violation enforcement program. Police Chief Mike Yates will address. Good morning, Chief Yates. Welcome.
Good morning. I don't think I need the microphone, but this Red Flags project is basically an automated speed enforcement project. The state of Georgia has changed its laws some in the last couple of legislative sessions. DOT has changed their rules a little bit. The advantage to us and this particular project is specific to the school zones, and I'm sure that y'all have noticed during the rush hour in the morning and afternoon, we have to commit a significant amount of manpower to help manage the traffic in our school zones. But when this project came up, the way I looked at it is it might be a good mechanism for us to do some automated enforcement. Got to get people to slow down and relieve our manpower burden for dealing with that. And Mr. Buckles kind of reached out to us, and I've had some discussion with the school district about it, and I think it'd be best just to let Mr. Buckles explain the project to you and see what you think.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sure.
Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning. Whoops. Good morning. My name is Charlie Buckles. I live in Lafayette, Louisiana. So I tell people, come visit us, we'll change your life. I'd like to also introduce Ms. Sherry Lewis. Sherry lives in Marietta, Georgia, and is in charge of our school bus stop arm enforcement, where we're the leading company in the nation providing public safety, pupil safety in bus locations. We appreciate the opportunity. We've had a long history with the City of Griffin. We at one time provided your red light camera program until GDOT kind of got involved in that, and unfortunately that did not continue. But we continued to serve cities throughout the country, actually throughout the world, with various types of tools for your police department. And one of the things I'd like to say in the beginning, we use the term automated enforcement, and that's a little bit of a misnomer, because automated enforcement many times has a connotation, well, it's just simply a machine out there and it is operating independently and totally automated. That's really not the case. What we provide is technology for your law enforcement to use to enforce certain violations, but all decisions are made entirely by your police department or by law enforcement. So it's not just it's not an automated machine, but we'll use the term automated in that concern. And I think that has gotten some of the connotation in the public out there, well, it is truly automated, when it really is not. So what I'd like to do is share with you, since the legislature last year passed a bill that will enable using photo enforcement devices in school zones. Now, as you'll see as I go through this, there's still some things in the works, so to speak, with GDOT and the permitting and things, but let me go through this and talk about this. First of all, first things first, does photo enforcement really reduce violations and crashes? Well, I can start by simply saying anytime you have full-time 24/7 enforcement, you're going to have more compliance with your laws. It's very difficult to put the resources of police officers out there 24/7, and of course that's where this comes in. It enables them to use electronic and photo enforcement tools so that they can use that as evidence and not have to be on place at all times. The National Transportation Safety Board talked about speed enforcement. You can't tackle rising epidemic of roadway deaths without tackling the speeding, and that comes right from the National Transportation Safety Board. From 2005 to 2014, there were 112,000 speed-related crashes, fatalities in this country. Now, it's also interesting that there was also 112,000 DUI crashes. Now, that's the ones we get exercised about. We say we've got to stop that. But you understand we're having the same number of fatalities just with speed-related that have nothing to do with DUIs. So the reason we don't get as exercised about that is that most of us don't drive drunk, but most of us do what? Speed. So that's why sometimes we look at this situation. I'm going to run through some of this stuff very fast, but the Texas Transportation Institute indicated that the best countermeasure for reducing speed is automated or speed enforcement cameras at intersections. Now let's talk about teen pedestrians, because this is really what we're focusing on today, is pupil and students and the impact of public safety in various school zones. There are 5 teen pedestrian deaths every week in the United States. Now, not all of them are school zone related, but many of them are. There's been a 13% increase in pedestrian deaths, a death rate for 12 to 19-year-olds since 2013. And of course, that's generally the age group that are the biggest at biggest risk in various school zones. And in 2015, while teens ages 15 to 19 made up 20% of all children ages, they made up about half of all pedestrian fatalities. So what does HB 978 do to help reduce the speeding? First of all, it authorizes speed enforcement equipment within the properly signed school zones between 1 hour before and 1 hour after the school operating periods. The school system is authorized to submit an enforcement permit to GDOT. Now that permit, believe it or not, has just in the last few weeks been actually produced, and I think I've had some conversations with Mr. Whalen, and we think there's still some issues with that actual permit, but it's actually out there now, and the school system can issue the permit for that. The enforcement notices are issued by local law enforcement, though. It does empower your law enforcement to provide this as a civil violation, not the standard criminal violation. It's clearly visible. Photo enforcement signs have got to be installed within 500 feet of the areas. Whoops, get back here, okay. The electronic enforcement provides, as I said, for a civil penalty. Now, that enables you to do a lower fine set up in the law, but also it's not quite as onerous on the public, because if your police department issues a speeding violation in a school zone today, it's pretty punitive, not only from a fine standpoint, but from points on the license and things like that. And if we can reduce this speeding without it being so onerous on the public, I think it's a win-win situation. Students are safer, and the traveling public is better served by that. And the way it's set up is that there's a civil penalty that'll be $75 for the first offense, $125 for subsequent offenses, and $25 for electronic processing of the civil penalty. And that's what's set up in the law. And then once it's established, there's a 30-day warning period where drivers get to know it and understand that enforcement is there. Violation notices, if you want to appeal it, is set up through an administrative hearing, so there's not a court setting where a person has to go to appeal it. It can be done strictly on an administrative basis. And these are just some of the areas where you have school zone locations in your city, and many law enforcement officials tell us that enforcing that in many school zones is difficult, because first of all, if you're going to have to stop them within the school zone, that's problematic as well. You've got traffic and things like that going on in the school zone hours, and it's sometimes a very labor-intensive, difficult thing to do. But these are just some of the things that I think you're very aware of here in Griffin, where you've got some school zones that have some real problem areas during those times. We will, shortly after the 1st of January, we'll be doing some surveys at no cost to the city for you, to give you an indication of the number of violations during school times, and that'll give you a much better picture of the situation that you have right now. So, this is the technology that we can provide to the city. When we provide this to the city, there's absolutely no out-of-pocket cost to the city whatsoever. We would enter into a contract with the city similar to what we had before with your red light camera, and we would charge you on a per-page citation basis. So you would never pay us anything unless you got paid for the violation. But we have different types of, sure, if you can hand me that right there, please. Different types of technology that can be used in a trailer platform, a vehicle platform, fixed sites. That's one of the things we're trying to get across with GDOT right now, is whether it's just fixed sites that would be utilized. This is a LiDAR unit. LiDAR unit very similar to what your police department is using today, with the exception this has a camera on it. So if the officer is using this in the school zone, he can enforce it without having to stop the vehicle, because everything is recorded here internally in the video. So it makes the officer much more efficient and makes it much safer within the school zone. So that's some of our enforcement devices. I'll not spend a lot of time on those, but I will show you this, because this is a history of what we've been able to do with speed enforcement. It's a real short little video, and I'll be wrapping up here in just a minute.
It's a popular misnomer that officers might write tickets. The last thing we want to do is just sit out there and write a bunch of moving citations. What we want is drivers to drive the way they're supposed to. Since we started our relationship with Redflex in 2001, our recorded injury crashes have reduced 40%. So this technology has proved invaluable for keeping our motorists safe.
One area I usually go to on a daily basis, I would say that it has reduced speeders in that area 25% just over the last year. I've been working with it now for about a year and a half, and I just love it. The Redflex system is great. The people there in Arizona that we work with are by far professionals.
I'm about 100 officers short of where I'm supposed to be, and obviously making sure our motorists are safe is a big priority, but I have to answer 911 calls for service as well. So I have to balance that with answering the 911 emergency calls with traffic enforcement. So this technology helps out quite a bit.
So to work with Redflex is definitely a benefit to us, and we're glad to have them aboard with us.
I can promise everybody who drives through the city of Toledo that they will never get a Redflex ticket mailed to them if they simply go the speed limit.
This is the process of what would take place, is that when an incident occurs, it's transferred to us, we review it according to your rules, and then we put it back on the web for your police department to review and decide if it's a violation. We never make that decision. If the police department decides that that's a violation, it goes back into our print queue, we print and mail the notice, we provide the collection for you, and it's a total turnkey system, but run completely by, and all decisions are made by your police department. This is just some of the examples of what your police department will look at. Moving into the school bus stop arm, and the city would or county would be involved in that if you chose to do that as well. But to give you an indication how serious the problem is, in October of this year, twin boys, 6 and a 9-year-old sister, were fatally struck at a school bus stop. There are, every day in this country, there is about 1 million illegal passes of school buses, and we can again provide that and help your law enforcement with that as well. So that's just some of the things that we can provide for you. I'll just close by opening it up for questions. Let me just get through this, and in the interest of time, just open it up if any of you have any questions about the way the program works or how this could be applied to your city.
I have a question. I know that we're targeting school zones and speeding. If you start with one area, obviously everything else kind of falls into place, obviously. But what about, and I'm glad you said that about the vehicles passing school buses, but what about, are you also going to look at the failure to yield right away, crossing on double yellows, or not stopping at stop signs? Is there any other offense that you also look for, or is it just speeding?
We actually can enforce all of those. Unfortunately, under the Georgia legislation, or Georgia, there is no ability for you to enforce that as a civil violation. We can still provide red light enforcement, and we're going to do some surveys for you again to determine the violations. Now, GDOT has become pretty strict on issuing permits for the intersection cameras, but all of those enforcement items that you talked about, yes, we have the technology to do it. Unfortunately, under Georgia law, it can't be done as a civil violation. We do have other technologies I can talk to the chief about, such as ALPR, license plate readers that can do amber silver alerts or looking for wanted, stolen, things like that. We have that technology as well.
Okay, thank you.
I might add that the LiDAR gun that Charlie showed you a minute ago can be used for the criminal side of law enforcement as well. It makes a picture. It shows the date, the time, and the location on that photograph, which makes great evidence in criminal court.
Mr. Buckles, is there a time override on this camera, say if it was a fixed camera, where well, say for instance, like today, when a lot of schools are reporting 2 hours late, instead of having a fixed time for this camera to be activated, can it be delayed to coincide with the school report times?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Especially if it's a fixed system. And even our mobile units, we would obviously need to know, how that works, but we have a national operations center where all of our systems are monitored on a regular basis to make sure they're operating properly. And so we can be very flexible with that and make sure that we're accommodating the right times.
Charlie, can I interrupt you one second?
Surely.
Ms. Murray, I want to answer your question a little bit better. I was thinking about it as we were processing through it. If we use the LiDAR speed detection device with a camera on it, we could enforce the crossing double yellow lines and failure to yield and things like that. And see, the advantage of it is currently when we deploy a police officer, for instance, down there at Crescent, the only way they can do it is to actually disengage from what they're doing, stop directing traffic, go get in their car, chase the person down, pull them over, and then process through the speed ticket. I would think that there wouldn't be anything to prevent us from using that LiDAR with the camera to sit there and do the violations as we go and then follow up on it on the back end, and they wouldn't have to stop. And that's what makes the speed enforcement and all these other things so difficult in the school system, because when we deploy manpower there, we're consumed with dealing with the traffic, and we can't stop and deal with it. So there is a significant advantage to that if we can in fact use it in that capacity.
And it's just for school zones, not necessarily like...
Right now in Georgia, it's just for school zones.
Yeah, right. Yeah, other states we can use it for other things.
Got it.
Chief Yates, what is your idea of what you're wanting? Are you wanting the handheld? Are you wanting the mobile cart example? Or do you want permanent fixed positions in certain zones? What is your...
Here, in general, I have mixed emotions about automated enforcement of any kind. However, what I'm looking at this project and similar things through is the eyes of what is going to increase the safety in the area and what is going to reduce the demand for my manpower. I would suggest, if we proceed forward with this project, of course the school system's got to be an intricate part of it.
Absolutely.
I would suggest that we do both, that we have both some fixed devices or use the trailer solution and have the handheld unit available, because the handheld unit, although I still have to have a police officer on the operating end of it, I can do that other type of enforcement too. So basically finding the right combination and working our way through it. But every day during the school year, the school zones take a significant amount of our deployed manpower to deal with the things that we have going on. Just, the reality of it is some of our schools are old. The roadways in that area aren't designed to handle the amount of traffic we have currently, and there's some challenges. So I guess we got to this place by trying to figure out what other options we had to help resolve some of this. So
aren't we having similar issues at Orrs and also Hill Street, same situations?
We could. Any of the school zones would be applicable. Of course, most of them are in the county, so that's kind of the second chapter of what we decide to do. So I think it's, at the very least, this is worth a pilot project and taking a look at it and working our way through it. And I think it has some, if everything falls into place, I think it has some significant benefits to it. Of course, the way Georgia's law is, is it does require the school system to apply for a permit. But I've talked with Mr. Smith, the superintendent, company, and there are certain things that you have to agree to do along with the permit, and I think it would be easy enough for us to do it and really not have any burden at all on the school system.
Let me say that we started looking at this earlier this year when the law was passed to try to see if it's something the city of Griffin would benefit from. As the chief says, the law requires that the application for the permit to be filed by the school system, actually with the superintendent signing that application. But it goes on to say that the local law enforcement agency operates the speed detection device equipment. And we operate the program as far as Charlie's explained to you how it works. When the photographs come back, the local decision is made. If that's a violation, then they get the notice of the civil penalty. There is some new regulations that came out in the fall of this year from GDOT. Those regulations, frankly, I believe are tighter than the law itself. I think the law's got more flexibility in it. We've talked to GDOT's general counsel, and they did make some changes, but probably not enough for what we'd like to do. The fixed device would be there in place and be mounted, of course, like we found with the red light cameras and our speed trailers that we've had people come by and shoot at this equipment and try to destroy it, things like that. And there's a lot of investment to put out there for somebody to shoot at. I think the mobile concept of a mobile trailer probably pays benefits more, because after a few days in one location, people are going to become aware of the fact that they may get a civil violation. So the ability to move it from place to place would be good. But the GDOT regulations require to get the school system to get the permit has to show need. Now, if they do like they've done with the traffic cameras, the red light cameras, GDOT doesn't think there's much need for those type devices, and it's denied a lot of permits based on that. So I don't know how they're going to react with us on this particular thing, but we'd like the flexibility to go into all these school zones and to be able to move equipment from zone to zone on a random basis. And basically, I think there'd be a better enforcement program out of it.
And as a follow-up on that, we're going to do, as I said earlier, we're going to do the surveys for you, and it'll give you, we'll have both the video and the actual results of how many people are speeding in these school zones during the appropriate time. So I think that's going to be a big plus for you as well. This is the evidence file. Now, this happens to be a school bus violation, but this is the kind of evidence file that your law enforcement looks at. Again, when I say automated, what we're doing is capturing the incident, just like an ATM, I hate to say it like this, but an ATM camera would capture the video of a mugging at an ATM camera, and the police would look at it later and prosecute based on that. It's the same concept. So when we use automated, understand what we're doing is capturing the record of the incident for your police to review and decide later if it's a violation. But here's what they look at on the illegal passing of the school bus. You'll see that the arm is out. Our system is triggered. There's a vehicle over there on the opposite side that's passing the bus. And you get the copy of the plate, and then they also have a video of the incident. If you'll watch this, you see the arm is out.
Bye-bye.
Clear violation. But it's very difficult for Chief Yates to have enough officers out there on a regular basis. That's what this does. So again, what we would want to do is try to move forward at a judicious basis with your city attorney, making sure that all the bases are covered legally and everything. And look forward. We really would be honored to work with the great city of Griffin once again, as we did for a number of years.
Thank you, Mr. Buckles.
Mr. Buckles, I do have a question about the school bus.
Sure.
The cameras on school buses. Is there a cost to taxpayers on those?
No, sir. No, sir. That's more in the area that we need to visit with the school system on, but again, there is no cost. We do that entirely at our expense and charge on a per paid citation basis. And
who gets paid that? The jurisdiction it happens in, or does the school system get paid 50-50?
Well, that would be worked out with the jurisdiction that the violation is typically where that occurs. And sometimes there's intergovernmental agreements between counties and cities. Like I said, we're at the very front end of that discussion right now. And but it's a very, very effective tool in changing driving behavior. Once people know the enforcement is there, it will change driving behavior.
I don't want to take up a lot of your time, but one other question in that regard. Is every school bus have a camera, or is it just random?
Well, it's not random. What we do is route analysis surveys to determine which buses are having, and that typically depends on the routes, the type of roadways they're on. I'm going to use a number that's maybe not accurate for every school system, but generally about 20 to 30% at the most of the buses are really subject to having a lot of illegal passes. And what we want to try to do is make the enforcement where there is a problem. But these could all, routes are dynamic, so they can always be changed and moved from one bus to another depending on the route. But we want to look at the areas where the children are most in jeopardy for that. And so it typically would be on every bus.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Buckles, just a couple quick questions. Under the fines, the first one's $75. You said there's a $25 plus a $25 administrative fee on top of that?
That is correct.
And then the second is $125 plus a $25 fee.
Plus one.
And the warning period would be a 30 to 60 day period that would be worked out on that.
Yeah. Once the program is established, that 30-day warning period, and what we do during that warning period at no cost to the city, we send out the warning notices to a violator and give them a specific date that after this date it would be fully enforceable. And we, again, we do that at no cost.
In regards to points, you said this is a civil matter. Would there be any points the state would award? So be clear on that. And how many miles per hour over the posted speed limit?
That's up to your police department.
Do you have any?
There is no requirement that I see in the law to give them any extra miles. The speed limit in the school zone's 25. They're going 28. They're in violation.
But understand, we don't make that decision at all. That's entirely a decision of your police department.
One thing this may trigger, and we've talked about it somewhat, is to go back and look at all the school zones within the city. If you read the statute which authorizes how you set up a school zone, we've got some question of whether we're all properly signs and markings and distances. One thing the law says you can have up to 1,000 feet from the boundary of the school property. I doubt we have areas where we could establish a zone that's that wide. If you had 1,000 feet on either side, I mean, minimum 2,000 feet. So we just need to go back and double check everything.
Chief, as far as our workforce, do we have the manpower to monitor this program and enforce the tickets and everything that you all do?
I think so, but I won't know for sure till we actually see what the volume is going to look like. And, kind of what I visualize with it is we set some parameters on, 5 miles per hour over. That's when we do it, or 10 over, or whatever we decide, and kind of narrow that in. But if although I think we would have some back-end administrative work to do on it, I think it might wind up being a manpower multiplier for us. So I think it's at the least a wash. So, but I won't know until we see what the volume is.
Okay, thank you.
Every one of our customers have told us that it is a force multiplier for the police department. It is a force multiplier for the police department, is that the time it takes to review the violations certainly is much less than actually deploying the officers out there for that period of time. So, but we work with your city administration and the police department to make sure it is very efficient, because it is truly a turnkey program from our standpoint, except for decision making as to who receives a violation. That's the only thing we do not do at all.
Mr. Smith's here. I assume that you're in full support of this. Do you have anything you'd like to say on behalf of the school system? Or?
I think all I would say is that I appreciate the chance to come and see the presentation. I was not familiar with the product. I look forward to the studies that they're going to be doing in the zones and see where this might lead us to. And maybe something our board might want to discuss. I don't know. I think there are issues that we probably need to be addressing, but I appreciate the chance to come and see this.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, can I?
Yes, sir.
Charlie, does Red Flags have the lock on this technology? Are there other companies that do this? And if so, why is yours?
We're the only one that have those units deployed right now. In Georgia, we have a very significant amount of stop arm camera enforcement. In fact, Ms. Lewis is in charge of all of that here in Georgia. So we are a very major player, and we do have some technology that other companies don't, but we're certainly not the only player in the market. But as far as the handheld unit, we're the only one that actually has it deployed at this point. Now, we don't have it deployed in Georgia only because the permitting is just starting right now. So yes, we do have some proprietary.
Are there any municipalities or communities that you've started working with over the years that have decided not to use the system anymore, canceled the contract, or at this point?
Gwinnett. Griffin. Well, we did have a red light camera program here in Griffin at one time.
Besides that, but in terms of the school zone?
No, sir.
They're all currently still?
The ones now, there's none operating in Georgia at this point, understand
so
that.
You don't have any in Georgia?
It's brand new.
It's brand new?
Yeah, no one has it in Georgia right now. It's not operational in Georgia.
So we don't know if, and it's not, I guess it wouldn't be a question to you, probably more to the staff. Have we looked at other alternatives, or is this just an introduction as the superintendent spoke of? I mean, I would want to see more than just one car before I make a purchase. I like that. I like the idea, and I think you did a very good presentation. And I'm definitely for safety in our school zones and on all of our streets.
Right.
But before I could say that I want to go with Red Flex, I would have to see what else is out there and what is going to be most beneficial to our citizens.
Yeah, we didn't expect a decision to be made. No. You know, I want to see the survey and the research too.
Right.
We've explored solutions for trying to find solutions for the traffic problem at Crescent School ad infinitum. I mean, we've tried everything we can possibly think of, and that's kind of what led us to this, and we're just exploring all options. And so far, it appears to be at face value a good solution for some of the problems we're having, but we won't know till we get all the way through our research.
Anything else? Mr. Buckles, Ms. Lewis, thank y'all for being here. Merry Christmas.
Thank you so much. Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mr. Smith, for y'all being here. Next, we're going to look at lens-lock body-worn camera demonstrations and update. Police Chief Mike Gates will address, and Captain Vitale will address. Welcome.
I'm going to try to make it pretty quick. I did want to basically just tell y'all thank you. If you'll recall, here a few months back, we went through this bid process to try to find a better solution for how we used our body-worn cameras. The Digital Ally product that we had before was left a lot to be desired. It wasn't reliable. We had all kinds of problems with it. We went through that exercise to find what we thought would be the best technology, and we chose the lens-lock product, and I think we made a great decision. Captain Attell is going to show you just a couple of quick demonstrations of it, and while he's getting set up, let me add this. Body-worn camera technology is not a choice anymore. The public demands it. The public expects it. That's kind of the new normal for law enforcement. What we have found, even when we had the other product, when the cameras are deployed properly, our citizen complaints have gone down depending on what time frame you check, between 50% and 70%. So it's huge. A couple things happen. The officers conduct themselves differently when they know that camera is there. They perform better. Plus, the public knows that exists, so it decreases a lot of our frivolous complaints. Obviously, some of our cameras work very well. But
what happened?
We went with, as you could have seen on Channel 11, but this one is a cloud-based solution, so it helps Ms. Teresa, and it helps us operate in respect to open records and also dealing with the district attorney's office and sharing evidence and things of that nature. We don't have to burn DVDs, put them in evidence, hand deliver them anymore. When we have to produce a video, we produce a link to it. We can email it to you and say, here, go ahead and take a look at it. Here you go. And that happens a good bit with some of our complaints. What we find with people that complain about one thing or another with the police department is a lot of times they're just mad. Sometimes they don't understand what happened, and very commonly when you live through a dynamic event like that or under stress, you remember it very differently than the way it actually happened. So we have the ability to let people look at that video, and even when they show up and want to file a complaint, that's usually how we start. Let's look at the video and see what happened. Most of the time we resolve it right there. Captain Attell's going to show you a quick demonstration of how this technology works. It does have night vision technology in it. The officers can activate it manually. It's got a lot of features, but it is money well spent. So it should help us with our transparency and make sure we operate properly. And like I said, I want to thank you because it's made my life a lot easier, and we've got some equipment we can rely on now. So, Captain, you ready to go?
Yes, sir. Yes. You can see from the showing results that already there's 10,341 videos already made since the inception of the program. And when the officers, I hate to talk back to you there, but once the officers sign into the portal, supervisors as well, they'll see a screen similar to this. This screen has more of the stuff on it because I'm an administrator on the program. But they'll start with videos that was last loaded in the docking station, and it shows every officer that's actually in the system. For example, all they need to do is to touch the play button, again, and the video will stop recording. Now sometimes you see stuff like this, it's just somebody that actually bumped the button, and there's miscellaneous small videos. Most of the times the videos, like for instance this last one over here at the end, is 13 minutes long. That happens to be a call with someone intoxicated laying down. So you see where the camera changed from color to night vision. The camera has a sensor on it that detects the low level of light. When it does that, it kind of turns to IR mode, which makes that into the infrared mode. It shows the night vision. So it's clear in both color and darkness. Most of the time, the video, if the flashlight is across it or the lighting gets better, it'll flip back to color.
Like an episode of Cops, minus the music.
So of course there is audio. We don't have it here, but there is audio. The audio is very good on this system. If Chief Gates did allude to it, we did an extensive research on 10 different products, which there's probably more than that. But we picked 10 similar to what we were needing as far as the specs, and we came up with lens lock being the best because I'm going to show you in a second. There's a redaction capability that's built into this software that where other programs, for instance like Axon, you have to pay for that extra. Cloud space that we pay for is unlimited, where other programs that you have to pay extra. And in fact, this was informed last week from Coweta County Sheriff's Department that they're using Axon, and they were billed 3 times as much the storage space that they contracted with. So they're up for a hefty invoice that they were one company that we found is if we leave tomorrow and get everything back, all the videos are ours. We don't pay for overages. And in fact, this program too, with cameras, where Axon's a one-time deal, we
See that?
get 10 cameras.
You see his shirt?
Cameras in 3 years, get the cameras.
Let's go backwards.
Mike, while you're getting ready for the redaction technology,
Look at it.
one of the things that is important, and I suspect that the open records law will be addressed some in the future, which will require redaction technology, where, we have to blur juvenile faces, sex crime victims, all that kind of stuff. That stuff is there in the law right now. But with the current technology, we don't have any way of doing it without employing a videographer or somebody to sit there and manually go through it, which becomes very expensive. So that's one of the reasons we selected this product, is that package came with. Other states are already there. I think we're headed the same direction. The other thing is we wanted one unit where everything was built into one device. The lens lock cameras had a wire with a camera lens. We replaced every single one of them at least 3 times. So we got it ruggedized. It's all in one unit, and we're really pleased with it. Mike, you ready?
Actually, if you look on the screen there, it's as simple as the click of redaction, the R&D field there. Put in the email address where you want the video after it's finished redacting, and it sends it to an email address that you place it, and all the faces that are blurred out. You see where it says select faces or redact video and audio. So you can do both, just faces or the video as well and the audio. So that has that capability built in. There's no extra charge for that. That's built into the price.
Every 2 years, or when they update the product, we get another one for free, or it's included in our costs. So,
are there other jurisdictions you know of that are using this system?
There are several in Georgia that are beginning. Well, I think we are one of the first. There's a sheriff's department that's doing it. I think Butts County's looking at it. It's starting to gain some traction, but we're the first. So, that's all I really had. I just wanted y'all to get an idea of how important this project is, and I think we made the right decision. I appreciate it.
So it has facial recognition, where it's built in with facial recognition, so
it's actually coming out. They want to have that built into it, so they will eventually.
So if there's someone that has a warrant that's issued, should they be able to use to help identify someone immediately?
Absolutely, yes, I wanted to also show that too, that if you look up on the screen, you see where at the bottom it says chain of custody. Yeah. So that's where we maintain the video, as far as who's opened it, who's watched it, who's sent it into it, so that we can show chain of custody for court purposes, so that they can't say that we've altered the video at any point. We can show the court that here's a chain of custody, much like we would do with evidence.
That's one of the super important things. Some of the other technology that was out there required them to remove a SD card and take it and load it into the computer system, and that compromises your integrity of your evidence every time. There's no way you can do that with this stuff.
Chief, I noticed last week on the news that the Atlanta Police Department had some sort of survey, a study made about their use of body cameras, and as a result, they're having to go back through more intense training. They had about 40% of their officers who apparently were confused as to the protocols they were supposed to be following. And Chief Shields said that she was going to be doing more discipline if they don't follow them in the future. Has that been a problem with you thus far?
It takes some getting used to. I think we've been using the technology long enough to where most of our people are familiar with the protocols of how to use the camera, and then how to maintain your evidence, and how to make sure you save it for retention schedules and things like that. Plus, the other thing with us, we have certain advantages and certain disadvantages with having a very young force, but probably more than 50% of our people at the police department don't know anything other than using body cameras. So we're not having, like Atlanta PD and some of the others, we're not having to go back and retrain somebody. I would probably have great difficulty with a body camera because I have a tendency tendency to speak my mind perhaps when I shouldn't. But I think we're doing pretty good. They're accustomed to it. And now there will always be occasions, especially under stress, where you forget to turn the thing on or you hit the button that doesn't come on. I mean, if you're in a hurry to get out of the car and what have you, there's going to be those occasions. But when we deployed this product, we said, you can't use the excuse that this don't work anymore. That's what we were getting with the digital allies, and a good portion of it was the truth. But we're very strict about that. And once you get past the learning curve with it, most of the officers really embrace it because they have figured out the advantage of it. You know, no longer do I have to put up with these frivolous complaints where somebody comes in and says, I did something that I certainly didn't do. So the culture has changed, the operation has changed, it's a generational thing, the equipment's getting better, but this is the future, and we're going to become more and more relying on it. There's a couple of things at play where we should be able to set up in the future some automated activation, like it comes on when you open the car door and things like that. I want to make it where you don't have to think about it. But we've come a long way, and this is a great tool for us.
The same camera system as what's on our vehicles? We have.
No, what's on our vehicles is a digital ally dash cam system, which was part of the old system. What we find right now is about 2/3 of them don't work. So we're almost to that point where we're totally relying on our body cameras anyway. I didn't find out about that till this morning. I knew some of them were malfunctioning, but I didn't know it was that many. LensLock does have a dash cam solution, but Mr. Smith and I we did a survey with the Chiefs Association. He and I have been talking to where we're trying to determine whether it's really worth it to continue with that. So that's something we're working on right now.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Chief, you said, you alluded to earlier about training somebody how to use this device. Isn't it just an on-off button?
Pretty much.
I mean,
there are some considerations about going into places where people have expectations of privacy, notifying somebody that they're being videoed. There's some little protocols like that in place. And that's one of the reasons I think the Georgia Open Records Act is going to address some of these issues, because as it stands right now, and under Georgia law, we could go to somebody's house on an alarm call, inadvertently capture their child in their underwear, and the next thing you know, somebody could give us an open records request and get the video and be sharing it amongst their buddies on TV.
About 3 years ago, there was a law passed here in Georgia limiting certain body camera footage through the open records law unless you had some urgent need for it, like you were a litigant in a lawsuit or something like that.
So it's a challenge, but like I said, it's one of those things that our force is so young. That's all they know. So it's a lot easier to train somebody that way than it is to go back and reinvent the wheel.
I think it'd be a good tool for evaluation.
Could be. Actually, part of our CLIA accreditation process is the shift lieutenants are responsible for going back and reviewing a certain number of videos at random every weekly, and we noticed training deficiencies and things like that. So it's probably changed the law enforcement more than anything that I've encountered in my career. So, anything else? I know y'all want to get on to it, but
thank you, Chief Yates.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike.
Next, we will have Phil Francis, Central Service Director, address us regards to a tier rate for collection of solid waste in the Central Business District. Good morning, Mr. Francis. Merry Christmas.
Good morning. Merry Christmas. I can't follow up all that technology. Kind of feel inadequate. In our findings, I guess, for lack of better words, we went back and looked at our current solid waste ordinance, and we haven't really done any major changes or updates since 2007 and 2008, when we invoked the mandatory recycling program and also the flow control ordinance. In looking at our current ordinance, we're just looking at kind of doing some housekeeping, twofold, housekeeping and also looking at some of the rates in our central business district and kind of get our rates in line with what we currently have published, and also working with getting our businesses kind of in line with our tax and licensing description as well. So if you'll look at page 1, I won't go over every one of them. I'll try to be as brief as I can, but Section 7438A, we're going to have what they call commercial and industrial is how it's really currently listed. We want to remove the word, make it just basically commercial customers, because industrial customers are contract customers. So if you're one of our big industries that we have out in the industrial park, you're going to contract with us to do your hauling, because a lot of that includes having a compactor or some other type of expensive, capital outlay that we may have to make in order to have that. So, and of course, because if we're going to make the investment to put a $30,000 piece of equipment out, we need you contractually to where you can, so we can pay for it, basically. So we want to basically make industrial its own beast, I guess, for lack of better words, and that's really pretty much that on Section A. Section B, commercial customers, and we've always classified our commercial customers as Class A, B, and C. You got heavy commercial, medium, and then light commercial. Under number 1, we just want to remove the word industrial. As I said earlier, that we're going to make industrial its own animal, so to speak. And heavy commercial is a single entity utilizing any container with a volume of at least 20 yards or greater, or utilizing a compactor unit. Apartment complexes, big businesses, let's say Belk, for example, they have a compactor out there that that would be heavy commercial. You got medium commercial, which would be basically any single entity utilizing solid waste container with a volume of at least 2 cubic yards, but no more than 20. And that's your restaurants, small businesses, different things, that have the 2, 4, 6, and 8 yard containers, the dumpsters that are emptied by dumpster truck, apartment complexes that incorporate those and such. Then you got light C commercial. Number 3 would be your light commercial. It's a single entity generating not more than 192 gallons of waste per week. And the reason that's such a random number is your carts that you take out to your curb every morning are 96 gallons. 96 plus 96 is 192. So, and that would be considered light commercial. And anything up to pretty much 4 of those, because that would be a 2 yard container, really pretty much. Now, unless otherwise provided in the customer's contract, all commercial customers shall receive 1 regularly scheduled collection each week. Now that's subject to frequency as far as volumes and different things in our rate schedule. You'll see as that'll get posted later on as we discuss rates. Extra service can be done at agreed upon rates, and that's all going to be shown later on. C, we want to add commercial customers within the central business district. We used to call it, I guess at our office we called it the downtown business district, but the tax and licensing entity and how it's done in our, all of our wording that we use is commercial or central business district. The commercial customers within a central business district as defined by the boundaries indicated in the official zoning map of the city of Griffin. So what it's doing is bringing our terminology with the same, in the same.
What about PCD customers? So they're commercial as well.
That's going to be on a negotiated rate.
That's not changing.
That's not changing. It's just the basically, what is that, 4-block, 5-block central business district?
Commercial customers are really not changing, other than you're taking and separating industrial and commercial.
Right.
The only thing that's changing in the ordinance is the central business district.
Right, in the central business district, and we've noticed as we were looking at, we want to, if you go to page 2, we want to basically insert 3 tiers of in the central business district. Since we don't have a lot of downtown dumpsters, and since removing a lot of the downtown dumpsters and also access and safety and issues, we've come to find out, looking at our rates and looking at what we're doing, is we got everybody kind of paying the same rate. So in looking at what we had in the central business district, we want to kind of basically go to 3 tiers. Number 1 would be a tier 1, which would be your office businesses within the central business district. Those businesses within the occupation tax classifications of transportation and warehousing, finance, insurance, real estate, and that's all in our wording that we have in our tax documents as well. Currently, those businesses which are office type, just small quantity waste generators, basically, and their waste is generated is basically your fibers and your paper and all that, because they do have the ability to do some recycling as well. They're currently paying $33.68 a month, which is the exact same rate, which is our published shared commercial rate. We propose to change that from $33.68 down to $21.97 per month. Now that $21.97 is, like I said, it sounds kind of random, but that's the same price as the residential solid waste is paying. That's each one of us in this building, in this room, are paying that. So we're going to make the small offices pay the same as keeping it in line with the household waste, because they usually use one 96-gallon cart. Tier 2 will be retail. Those businesses with an occupation tax classification of wholesale trade, retail trade, healthcare, social assistance, other services, a barbershop, wash, dog grooming, laundromat, personal care service, shoe repair, place of worship that we have in the downtown business district, there'll be no change. We're going to leave that at $33.68. And what I mean, and the reason being for that is there are different types of waste and more waste in certain areas. It's cyclical a lot of times as far as the times of the year, different things. So your retail businesses will remain the same with no change. Tier 3 will be your manufacturing and food service. Those businesses with an occupational tax classification of manufacturing and accommodation and food services, i.e. your restaurants. And residential customers, well, wait a minute, let me go back, sorry, I apologize. And we propose that go from $33.68 a month to $45. And what I mean by, and why it went from $33.68 to $45 is $45 is our lowest commercial rate that we currently have published for our 2-yard containers. So if you're a business, if you're a restaurant or a food service or somebody, a large quantity waste generator, your rates will be in line with any other commercial business in the city of Griffin. So it's not going to be you getting special rates or anything like that. So 4 of those 96-gallon Herbie Kirby's or carts or whatever you call them equals 2 cubic yards of waste. 2 cubic yards of waste is $45 in our current rate, and has been since I've been here, and we haven't decided to change that. So what a downtown business food generator pays for their own service will be the same as somebody outside the central business district that has a restaurant. Your residential customers within the central business district will be charged a shared residential rate. Residential customers within the central business district. I got a typo there, I think. Wait a minute. Residential customers will be charged we got to go back and fix that, and I thought I read it 3 times myself. They're paying currently an apartment rate of $19 and some change a month for residential customers that are in the central business district. For example, lofts and different things like that. They won't be going from they won't be $33.68. There'll be an apartment rate which is like $19 and $19.73, something to that effect.
So they'll get a decrease.
No, they've always paid that. Yes, there won't be any change in the residential. Yeah, that, and I have no idea how I missed that, and I don't know. I can't speak for.
Hey, Phil, back up. Did you say Tier 2 would not be a change?
There would be no change of 3368. So if you had a clothing boutique or some type of a computer business or something to that effect, it would still remain the same. We're looking at reducing the smaller office waste generators and basically the ones that are generating the most waste.
Right.
And it's not picking on, it's fair and equitable as far as that goes. But the residential customers within the central business district will be charged a residential apartment rate, and we'll make that change to it and get it to you, because the residential apartment rate is already published and we have no intention on changing that. And the rest of it is
that's what they're paying now.
That's what they're paying now. There'll be no change.
So there's no change in Tier 2 or the residential?
Or the residential,
Tier 1's going down, Tier 3's going up.
Right.
It's going to wash.
Kind of offset itself. But we've recognized for years that an office that just fills up a trash can once a week is not the same as a restaurant that has
5 or 6 of them. See, we service the downtown business district 3 days a week anyway. I call it downtown, sorry, Mr. Smith, but we currently
service. That's really the only change. And it only affects the central business district.
Right. And if you'll see as we go a little further down, just changing the items numbers as far as bringing those up to date, and remove currently item I, responsibility of owner to remove waste by removal by the city. Just remove those and assesses the cost against the owner or occupant in addition to next utility bill. Unpaid assessments we collected in a manner providing for collection delinquent taxes. That needs to be removed, and we'll just replace it with it according with section 4231 section of this code. Everything else pretty much the same. To kind of give you an idea of the tiers that our tax and licensing department puts everyone under, just never mind the little numbers in these documents, never mind the little numbers that are out in the parentheses, but it kind of gives you basically how we looked at Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3, which is already established business dynamic that we currently use in the tax and licensing piece when you come in to get a business license and tax. So, and I'm open to any questions.
So you're saying on Tier 1, roughly, does it end with public admin? Is that the last one on the list? On my screen, that's what I see. So roughly 400 or 500 businesses in Tier 1 that we're going to make that change?
No, those, yeah, just.
That's citywide.
Oh, citywide.
Citywide, yeah. Just don't worry about the numbers in the parentheses.
The numbers in the parentheses are just the classifications through some overall coding system that tax and licenses use to code businesses for their occupational tax.
Got it.
So for your purposes, those don't really mean anything.
Do we know about how many will be affected by the Tier 1 getting the decrease? Is it substantially more on the Tier 3 getting the increase?
It's going to be, I'm going to say 35-45% are going to remain the same. We're going to have 15-20% go lower and about the same amount go higher.
Okay.
So, because basically, to make it simple or simpler in my mind, I look at it as you got a bunch of folks that generate food waste. Mm-hmm. It's really sloppy and it's really heavy. Mm-hmm. You got folks that have just a regular office type business, a financial business, different things like that. They generate a bag of waste every other day or month or what have you. So with me having to stop a truck and run 6 carts or 8 carts, which equals two cubic yards of material, which equals a 2 cubic yard in our published rates that we already have now. But to answer your question, yeah, it's going to be, I don't see a whole lot of big change as far as revenue. I don't know if it's going to really be revenue neutral or whatever, but we're doing everything that we possibly can to make it fair and equitable with everybody.
Okay, thank you, Phil.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Francis.
Thank you.
Next item is to discuss proposed options addressing auto repair facilities and the unsightly outside storage of vehicles, under repair and operable vehicles. Developmental Service Director, Mr. Toussaint Kirk, will address. Good morning, sir.
I yield to the gentleman from the third floor.
Oh, man.
Good morning, Mr. Kirk.
All right, good morning. All right, so what we have before you is basically the recommendations from the board on how to deal with auto repair shops. We're dealing with two different sections. You're dealing with the Code of Ordinances and also the UDC. And if you see the UDC is just a table where we put a footnote in, basically saying outside storage is prohibited, and then it tells you about the 4 cars per bay, or using the shall have no more than the parked cars that are legally allowed based off the requirements for Article 8 and Article 9, which dictate the parking spaces, number of parking spaces. Also talks about landscaping, what have you. Again, if the business is already existing, the only real thing they have to really worry about is striping the parking lot. Now, if there's a new business comes to town, is from the ground up, of course you have to do the entire thing. So that's just part of the UDC. The Code of Ordinances, we also added that language in the Code of Ordinances to make it a little bit stronger. So if anyone comes to kind of question us, we can say, hey, it's right here in the code. So, and we also added a definition for motor vehicle under repair to make sure we define what it is we're talking about, so there's no discrepancy. You'll see that under 90-141, where it says motor vehicle under repair, meaning any vehicle is defined in this article being serviced for malfunctioning or broken parts or systems, or being serviced by adding or removing features or components to or from the vehicle, or otherwise customizing that vehicle. Under 90-142B, it's pretty much the same. The only thing we added was or motor vehicles under repair. You'll see they're highlighted in red. Further down, you also see under 3D, where it speaks specifically about 4 cars per bay or the parking, where in furtherance of subsection A of this code section, a business conducting automotive repair, including but not limited to an automotive engine repair and replacement shop, auto tire dealer, and automobile body, paint, or interior repair and maintenance shop, shall have no more than 4 motor vehicles per service bay, exterior service bay, which is a bay/garage door located on the outside of the principal business structure, or shall have no more than those which can be legally parked in a paved, striped parking lot in conformance with the Unified Development Code Articles 8 and 9 as required. So I think we've addressed your questions or concerns and added the recommendations. And so if you're happy with this, we can move forward.
Did we want to put a time period on the repaired vehicle definition?
That was one of the earlier options, and we didn't necessarily want to do that. I mean, it depends on, as the repair shops say, if they can get the part, great. If they can't, then it may take longer than, 30 days or so. Who knows?
Okay.
So our compromise was to do the either or of the 4 per bay or the number you can put in the parking lot. And after our ride along, we felt like that was a reasonable compromise, but other than that, I don't know what other alternatives that we can offer up.
And we're also addressing the issue of vehicles parked on right-of-way utilities. I think it's some section as well.
I think that's in there somewhere. Yeah, it actually right here, actually under B, 90-142B, where it says, where we added or motor vehicles under repair on any public street adjoining street right-of-ways or owned property owned or leased by the city or designated for off-street parking except in accordance with this article. Basically, you can't park in the right-of-way. That's what it says at the end of the day.
Okay. Any questions or comments? I appreciate staff's patience on this and diligence. And
This is not on the agenda tonight. This has got to go to the zoning board because of the change.
UDC.
So it won't be back until January, and we have to have 2 readings, I think, at that time.
Right, so we'll do, because you got code of ordinances requires 2 readings, and then the UDC requires the planning and zoning and board of commissioners. We're going to try to time it where it all happens all at one time.
We just wanted to make sure before we went through all those steps that this was something that you felt like you could compromise on.
Yes, sir.
How do you feel, Tucson? Is it advisable?
I'm just saying, I mean, we are here now, so I'm happy.
Okay.
All right?
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Well, I'm going to continue to stand with those people who did what we asked them to do in the beginning. So we can continue to politic and whatever, but I'm going to stand with those people and the staff who went out and performed the duties that was asked of them for some 2 years, and those people who put forth their money, their time, their energy. I'm going to stand with those people and make sure that they understand what's going on.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gordon. Moving to item 5, pursuant to OCGA Section 401436, consider convening executive session for the purpose of deliberating and discussing the evaluation of personnel. Do we have a motion to go in closed session? Motion. Mr. Tinsley with the motion. Do we have a second? Second. Ms. Murray with the second. All in favor, let's please go to the room.
Thank you, folks. Y'all have a Merry Christmas. I'm going to stand until the
I feel like it's Christmas or something.
Oh, it's a better.
Stuff like that, but thank you.
Hey, Charlie.
Very exciting.
What's that sausage place out there? I used to have a friend that lived in Lafayette. You used to take me out there and get that sausage.
We say there's 3 to 2 of them.
No, this is back in the 80s. One place that you like to go. No, it was give me another.
Every morning.
I missed mine this morning.
This claw
One of the
sausage, don't
schools
get
is 2 hours behind, so I couldn't get rid of it.
one sausage.
But, you know,
How long is it?
It's good seeing you. Have a good call.
I appreciate you. Have a safe trip back. Merry Christmas. Oh, okay. Okay.